Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for making the time to join us here today. So appreciate it. Today we're going to begin, to hear from Dr. Richard Friedland. But before we do, I just want to express our deepest condolences as a community to Richard and to the entire team at Netcare on all of the tremendous loss of life from the helicopter crash, the Netcare helicopter crash, which happened this week. And just before we begin, as a tribute to these heroes who passed away in this tragic crash, I'd like to begin just by playing a short clip of an impromptu memorial service which took place in Johannesburg on Friday afternoon.
Our specialist ECMO team. They were young, they were talented, they were committed, and they were passionate. And in the process, a catastrophic accident occurred, and they gave their lives. There can be no greater calling than to die in the service of mankind on a journey to save other lives. And so we are here today to mourn their loss, to honor them, and to respect what they stood for. And during this terrible COVID crisis, we have lost so many of our frontline colleagues. The suffering has been enormous. Here in this hospital, as we were speaking this morning to our teams, we lost another member of our healthcare staff there and then. And so, colleagues, what is the message? What is the message we take out of the suffering of all of our people in South Africa, of our communities, of our loved ones, and in particular, of our fellow healthcare workers? How do we continue when we are faced with such devastation? And I think the answer lies in what our 5 colleagues taught us in the last 24 hours. No matter what, no matter how difficult the circumstances are, no matter the challenges that lie before us, this is our calling. This is what we are purposed for as healthcare workers.
Richard, our hearts and prayers are with you and everyone at Netcare, and especially with the bereaved families who lost their loved ones in this terrible crash. And also with all the bereaved families of your frontline healthcare workers. I'm sure, Richard, this week has been indescribably difficult and hard for you. And on behalf of our entire community, I just wanted to express our deepest condolences and strength and prayers to you and everyone at Netcare.
Thank you very much, Chief Rabbi. It has been a shocking week with a catastrophic tragedy, something that one hopes and prays never happens. We started this service, I started it 22 years ago with 6 paramedics and 4 cars, and we built it into a national service. And over the years, we have 8 helicopters. We've done thousands of these mercy missions, thousands upon thousands. And at any one time, we could have 4 or 5 helicopters in the air. And one always prays that one never gets that call. But unfortunately, that call came this week. And I do want to thank everyone in our community and other communities that have reached out at this shocking time to offer support and love to the families that remain behind and to our colleagues. We're all healthcare workers in it together. And I really want to say thank you. I know that when we flew back from the crash scene in 3 helicopters. We did a flyby tribute at Mill Park Hospital late in the evening, and all the paramedic services in Johannesburg were present. And I know that Hatzola was there as well. And that meant an enormous amount to us. And, as I said in that, as healthcare workers, this is our calling. This is our purpose. We are all servants of God, of Hashem. And this is why we are here. And we need to continue in our plight to help those that are most vulnerable, and in particular during this COVID crisis. So I'm going to continue, if I may, with what I normally do, and go through the slides and put them up for you.
But Richard, we salute all of the heroes in Netcare, and indeed across all hospitals and healthcare workers across the country. These are the heroes, the soldiers in this battle to defeat this disease. And may God continue to bless each and every single one of you.
Thank you very much. I want to take you through a very brief presentation. I think what you'll see is that for the last 2 weeks, the numbers have indeed come down. We're on the other side of the mountain. We've peaked and we're coming down. But as you'll see, the numbers are still pretty high, and as high as they were in the first peak, particularly in the Gauteng. And I want to end off today by issuing a small caveat, a small warning about a third wave, and show you what's happening around the world, and then show you what's happening with the vaccine rollout, because that should also serve as a caveat of just how difficult it is to roll this out. So as we looked last night, there were 12,000 confirmed cases, but importantly, we're seeing more recoveries. And when you see more recoveries, people over 14 days in terms of their illness, you know that we're in a position of recovery versus new cases coming through. And tragically, and we know this number is underestimated, but 40,000 South Africans have perished. We think that number is significantly higher. If you look at it over the last 2 weeks, you can see that, again, the change in active cases is all positive. We've had a reduction in active cases in the Gauteng of nearly 40%, a 34% reduction, 48% in the Eastern Cape, and 26%. And then what I've included here are graphs really showing you the stage of the pandemic over the last month, and the red line demonstrating when we peaked. And so you can see in the Gauteng, we've peaked in the last 10 to 14 days, as we have in the Western Cape. And we know in the Eastern Cape, we peaked over a month ago, and we're in a similar situation in KwaZulu-Natal, and it varies overall. I think this is a very important graph, because a lot of people say, the cases have come down in South Africa, why can't we reopen? But in reality, when you look at it, yes, we've had 2 weeks of cases coming down, average daily cases, but we're kind of almost level with the peak that we were in the first wave, given the size of this peak. So the number of active cases out there, although we've come off a very significant peak, is actually extremely high, and we need to still be very cautious. Again, this just demonstrates the peak, and where we are today, you can see almost in line with the peak of the first wave. I showed you this a few weeks ago to say we'll know we were in recovery when the dotted line, the lead indicator, the actual number of cases, versus the lag indicator, which is the sum total of the moving average of cases, when that line actually crosses. And then you see recovery. And you can see here how precipitous this was here. We started about 10 days ago, crossing this line, and we're clearly in recovery, and it shows you that this average curve is coming here. I want you to just take a photographic shot of this and look at this peak versus that peak, because I'm going to show you something later on why we're so concerned with how precipitous this drop is at the moment. Again, the number of cases testing positive is also a lead indicator for us. It does signal improving or worsening if it's going up a situation, and it's certainly improving. It's at 19%, and it does look like we're on the road to recovery. And this just shows that you're in the provinces, and this shows that you per million. You can see all the provinces now coming off. I just want to show you the 4 major provinces and what's happened compared to the first wave. 39% reduction in the Eastern Cape. And the dark green line is the second wave versus the first wave. You can see the first wave lasted 75 days. This is now lasting longer. And we consider recovery within Netcare when we get back to where we were here in early September of about 100 cases per day. And there's still a while to go, but it's certainly continuing for longer. If you look at it in the Western Cape, we've come out to 48% drop in the last week. And again, we're now 80 days into the second wave. The first wave lasted 110. We think that it will last at least 110 days. And we believe that recovery is what we saw again early in September in the Cape of about less than 150 new cases per day. KwaZulu-Natal, we've had 2 very good weeks of a drop. Again, we're at 55 days. The first wave was 55. So you can see that it's predicted that this second wave is going to last quite a bit longer in KwaZulu-Natal and probably not dissimilar to the Eastern Cape. And finally, looking at the Gauteng, we've come off very precipitously, a 32% drop in the last week, which is quite fantastic. The first wave lasted 60 days. We think we've got at least 2 weeks before we get down to these kinds of levels, and it remains to be seen as to whether it lasts that long. As I've always shown you, the reproduction rate or the reproduction number, it's been above 1 for a long time and started coming down to below 1, which indicates that the pandemic or the outbreak is under control. And as we speak in today, the RT number is at 0.7, which is an excellent number. And it shows you that by all indications, we're moving into a recovery phase. Remember, this was the first wave. We recovered, and then we started picking up at the end of September, October, and we've been in this phase above 1 until then. Now, I want to caveat everything I've said by showing you the following graph. What we've actually seen in the United Kingdom and in Portugal and France and Spain and other countries is a third wave. And this was the first wave we saw, which we thought was catastrophic. But actually, we then went and saw a second wave. And now we're beginning to see a third wave in these countries. And as you'll notice, the drop-off after the second wave was precipitous. The shape of this curve and these curves is almost identical to what we are seeing in South Africa. And I just want us to be very, very careful that when children go back to school in government facilities in the middle of February, and when the lockdowns are released in the middle of February, we may well face a third wave. Now, our own internal modeling shows that there is no reason why we will not face a third wave in the early winter period of South Africa in late March and April, going into May. And it is really up to us from a practicing of social distancing and wearing of masks and washing our hands. That's absolutely critical. And I think they've reached absolutely catastrophic levels in Spain, where this third wave is significantly higher. Now, a lot of us are putting store behind a vaccine rollout. We know that we've got 1.5 million vaccines for healthcare workers. But I'm going to put up a slide now that shows you just how difficult in so-called first world countries it is to roll out a vaccine. Let me show you this. So this is the percentage of the population that has received at least 1 dose. And you can see Israel leads that in well over 25%, almost 30% of the population has now received 1 dose. But you can see other countries where they are at less than 5%, the vast majority, and some between 5 and 10%. And that's after a 6-week period. So this idea that we can simply roll this out incredibly quickly and that we can do it before a third wave is somewhat naive. And these are countries with very, very developed programs. But what's more important is to look at the graph on the right-hand side. because we know that with many of these vaccines, you need at least 2 doses. And so, yes, you can roll out 1 dose, but you can see what percentage of the population is actually immune. In other words, has achieved 2 injections. And here again, Israel leads with 11% of its population after 6 weeks. And I put this up, friends and colleagues, just to demonstrate how careful we have to be in 2021. There may well be a 3rd wave. We may get a vaccine in the 1st quarter. It may come in the 2nd quarter. But the rollout of that, in our estimation, is a good 3 to 4 months before we achieve some form of immunity. And so it's well within the realm of possibility that we're going to have to live with COVID right through this calendar year of 2021. And so I end with that plea that we should not let our guard down at this stage. The numbers are coming down. We're still in a danger zone, and we still need to be extremely careful. Thank you very much, Chief Rabbi.
Thank you, Dr. Friedland. So I appreciate your time and also the remarkable perspective that you give us on each occasion that you present. So deeply appreciated. We're now going to look at, from a community perspective, and the numbers of infections in Johannesburg and in Cape Town, looking from a Johannesburg perspective from Hatzola. The chairman of Hatzola, Lance Abramson, is going to share with us the Johannesburg numbers, and then Loren Raize from CSO Medical in Cape Town will give us a perspective of the Cape Town numbers. Lance, please share with us. And before you do, I just want to pay tribute to Hatzola and to CSO Medical in Cape Town for the remarkable life-saving work that you have done and rendered for our community throughout these months. It's been quite remarkable. I myself and my family have been beneficiaries of it. The wellness program and the way that you take people and support them through it is something which is literally saving lives. Both Hatzola and CSO Medical, I cannot say enough in tribute to these 2 remarkable organizations. And so thank you on behalf of all of us. Lance, tell us Johannesburg community numbers.
Thank you, Rabbi. Certainly. I'd also just like to start off with extending our condolences from Hatzola to the families of Rabbi Maizels and Eric Samson, and to the families of the crew of Netcare One that lost their lives last week in a very dark day for EMS. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of those people at this difficult time. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so this is the active cases that we have in Johannesburg. And if you look at this graph, you'll see that it is very similar to the national graphs that Richard was showing us on the slides before. This peak over here was the peak in the last wave that we looked at, and that was in July of last year. And that peak over there was around 260 cases, 263 cases, and it slowly came down, and then we were kind of in this, this low level of cases for all of this time. And then in early December, we had this peak over here. Now, this was the rage peak and the associated cases with it, and that was in early December over there. The cases went up and came down, and then started to climb up to this peak over here. And that over there, if this was 262, these cases over here were in their 330s. So that lasted quite a long time, those cases in their 330s, a couple of weeks. And then what happened is it started to come down to a point where we are now sitting at the 240. This was on Friday, in the 240. And this is active cases per day. This means at any one given time, this is how many patients we are looking after on the wellness program. So right now, there's 240 odd cases on the wellness program. It mirrors the national trend. It went up to a peak and it is coming down, and that is the good news. But just very much to echo Richard's sentiments is that we still kind of in line with the high peaks from last time. It's still very, very high numbers in the community in Johannesburg. And we've got a way to go before we get right back down here to these kind of numbers. And that's where we want to be before we see people relaxing their guard The community now is not the time to kind of let go, but just for the next few weeks to get it down there, we need to hunker down. And then we need to kind of be careful in these intermediate phases to make sure that, I mean, if you look between here and here, it's about a 3 to 4 month gap between the first and the second wave. And we would hope that there's a 3 to 4 month gap between the second and third wave. But that depends on behavior, on people's behavior. And we would hate to see a kind of 3-week gap between the second and third wave. That would be something that would certainly not be good for the community. And just some interesting stats from behind the scenes. So to date, since the beginning of last year, we've monitored and cared for 2,301 COVID positive patients on this program. It's required a team of 65 people who are made up of full-time employees and volunteers. And this is a staggering number. They've made over 42,100 calls to patients in the past year. And that's to check in on the patients, take their vitals, and see how they're doing. We have 11 nurses working for us, and they go around visiting the more unwell patients. And when a patient deteriorates, we consult with the patient's GP. Everything is done in conjunction and consultation with the patient's GP, and then arrange a nurse visit with one of these nurses that are going around. And we've done over 5,000 home nurse visits to date since the beginning of COVID. We've moved 254 patients off the program and into hospital. If the patient deteriorates to a particular point, then we're able to identify that early and move them into hospital so they can get the care that they need in the proper environment before it becomes a medical emergency. So that's been very beneficial for the Hatzola team. And that number obviously excludes numerous other COVID patients that we've taken to hospital who are not on the program for whatever reason. And I'll talk about those numbers a little bit just now. Currently have 8 drivers on our Hatzola Assist program. These are literally Uber drivers that we've now got working for us, and their cars have been partitioned off so that the front and the back cabins are completely separated with plastic sheeting. And because of that, they're able to transport COVID positive patients to and from hospital and transport the nurses around, because the nurses are coming into contact with COVID positive patients. So you can't just put them in a car with a driver. They need to be moved around in a specially adapted vehicle. And these drivers have done 5,265 trips to date, including nurse rounds and patients. On the EMS side, meaning on the ambulance side, we've, since COVID started, our dispatchers have fielded 10,000 phone calls since the start of COVID. And we've dispatched, on the ambulance, we've dispatched the ambulance 4,458 times to medical emergencies. A large number of these are COVID positive patients, and this is nearly double the volume over prior years. So really, during this time, our ambulance and our crews have been extremely busy treating these patients. Just going to pause here for 1 second. If there's anybody on the webinar that doesn't have any of the numbers, I can just take them down quickly. The first line is the COVID home wellness line, and that's for COVID-related questions and for anybody on the program, or if you need to get onto the program, you can contact that first number. The second number is the emotional wellness line, which Sherry's going to speak a little bit about just now. But if anybody needs emotional support, they can call that number. And then the last one is the normal Hatzola emergency line. That's for medical emergencies, the normal medical emergencies. I'd just like to end off this with just thanking our team. Obviously, it's been incredibly busy, stressful. Everybody's tired, everybody's worked hard. And we've got an amazing team of dispatchers and responders and admin staff and office staff and our board of directors. And everybody's really worked an incredible amount of overtime and carried an incredible load. But they keep reminding me that the community ain't heavy, because they're our brothers and sisters. And I would like to thank them for the incredible work that they're doing.
Thank you, Lance. And we also pay tribute to the amazing work and dedication, and also self-sacrifice, and really exposing themselves to risk as well in helping to protect and heal our community. So we're so grateful. We're also so grateful to CSO Medical in Cape Town, and what's been an amazing story. I know that the two organizations have worked together and supported one another, and that's such a special story. So Lauren, if you'll just give us a quick update in terms of Cape Town, and Lance convey to everybody at Hatzolah, our deepest gratitude as a community. Words cannot adequately thank everybody for what they have done and continue to do. And I've seen it myself from personal experience, those daily calls, what it means to people who have COVID and how it literally carries you through the entire experience and is literally saving lives. So God bless you and success in everything.
Amen. Thank you.
Loren, from a Cape Town perspective, do you want to give us a quick update in terms of numbers? Okay, so I believe that Loren's actually got a computer problem at the moment. So I'm going to ask Sherry, if you'll just share with us. Sherry Hansen is on behalf of Hatzolah running the emotional wellness line. I don't know if Lance, if you want to introduce, or Sherry, you'll just tell us a little bit about it. What I think is really interesting is this dimension of teen support. We just have, maybe you could just share with us very briefly what's going on with that, and then we'll hopefully by then Loren's computer will be working and she can join us to give us the Cape Town perspective.
Sure. So just a very brief introduction that a few years ago, the penny dropped for us at Hatzolah that emotional wellness is as important as physical wellness. And we started to focus on that space, first with our crisis response unit that comes onto scene with us and looks after bystanders and family members while we're treating patients, because they're also going through a trauma. If a loved one has collapsed or been in an accident, and up to now there's been no one on the scene that pays them attention, because we focused on the patient. So Sherry's involved in that team over there, and we've grown out from there to build in the emotional wellness line where people can call for emotional support, and now the teen chat line, which Sherry's going to talk about particularly today.
So thank you so much, Lance. Sherry, will tell us about this teen support line and how you've structured it, and because I think it's so important that we give proper support to our teenagers, emotional support. This has been such a traumatic time for everybody, but sometimes teenagers can get forgotten about. And so just share with us briefly what's happening with that.
Thank you, Rabbi. I think that, Richard really put it so succinctly when he said we thought that it was going to be over in 2020, but we really are in for the long haul. And it doesn't look like, we're going to be dealing with anything different the entire 2021. And for teenagers, there's been such profound loss. They have had the loss of being able to socialize with their friends. They've had the loss of normal everyday school activities that they would be doing, sport, etc., matric dances, just to name but a few. And I think, as you said, Rabbi, we often forget about the teens. And at Hatzolah, we decided to address this population group by really finding a medium that talks to the teenagers. So we have developed an app on Telegram, which once you turn off your location of your teenager's phone, which should be done anyway for any social media, and they download the Hatzolah Connect app on Telegram. It's an easy number to remember and to save in their phones, the 0600 124 124. All they have to do is click on that and they can start talking to a counselor. The counselors have been well trained throughout the year and are supervised by professional social workers and psychologists. And so far we have really seen how teenagers and children have really suffered alongside the adults. There are lots of losses, and in addition to that, they are also dealing with the everyday issues that teenagers face that we sometimes forget when we're dealing with big losses. Their losses of fighting with friends, not being able to see grandparents, those are all really tough things that teenagers are having to deal with right now.
Okay, great. So the details for it, I know that Limor has put it in the chat line so that people anyone can use it. And then my understanding is then the teenagers would message. It will be text, anonymous, and they can get the support through the text messaging. And I think that's a tremendous gift. So just may Hashem bless you in success in giving the right support. And Hatzolah, thank you for the vision in making such a thing happen. Thank you for your time to explain it.
Thank you, Rabbi. I think also, Richard, in your very heartfelt videos said, how do we continue in the face of all this loss? And the answer is that we continue by not feeling alone. And I think, we as a community are exceptionally lucky with all the different communal organizations that we have. But even so, with COVID, a lot of people have felt very alone. And hence our attempt to address this for the teenagers with the anonymous line and with the wellness line for adults, phone lines. So I hope that the community will take this up and not feel alone.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's such holy work and so important. And really congratulate both Hatzola for taking this on, and may Hashem bless you with great success in this. So what we're going to I wanted to talk to two very special people in the second part of our discussion this afternoon, and it's really in relation to two great figures, human beings, leaders that our community lost, Rabbi Desmond Maizels of blessed memory and Eric Samson of blessed memory. And I want to start by talking to Rabbi Suiza. Rabbi, I know that you worked so closely with Rabbi Maizels, as both of you as Dayanim on the Cape Beth Din, and we're close friends and colleagues for many, many years. Rabbi Suiza, I know that you're in Lisbon now as the rabbi of the city of Lisbon, and we wish you much success in that position, which you just assumed just a few months ago. And of course, this is a tremendous loss. Rabbi Maizels was a dear friend of mine and of so many of our community. Really to think of Cape Town Jewry without Rabbi Maizels, it's almost unimaginable. I mean, he was a shochet, a mohel, a sofer, a dayan, a rabbi, the head of the kashrut department, and he had a tremendous warmth and energy and optimism and warmth and cheerfulness and happiness with life. And he touched the lives of so many people with total dedication. And Rabbi Suiza, what I found so powerful about Rabbi Maizels, and maybe we can start our discussion there, is really the fact that for him, he wasn't really on a job, so to speak. It wasn't just a job for him. It was a mission. It was a calling, which meant that he never stopped working. And his work drove him, till every waking hour. He was always busy with it because he was on a mission and a calling to help people and to serve the community and to serve Hashem. And I'm sure you saw so many instances of his incredible self-sacrifice and dedication. Welcome, Rabbi Suiza, and so thank you for making the time to talk to us today.
Thank you, Chief Rabbi.
Rabbi Suiza, your video is off. Maybe you can put it on so we can.
Sorry, I know you can hear me, but I can't get into the picture.
Okay.
Maybe I will just answer your question. It says the host is not allowing you in.
Okay, Limor, let's see if we can get Rabbi Suiza on camera. But maybe in the meantime, Rabbi Suiza, if you'll start to share with us some of your memories, and because you were on camera a little bit earlier, so I'm sure it can be sorted out. Rabbi Suiza, if you'll start to share with us some of your memories. Oh, there you are. Nice to see you, all the way from London.
Thank you, Chief Rabbi. Thank you very much. Yeah, my memories of Rabbi Maizels was having a true friend, and having a true rabbi, and having someone to aspire to be like him. So whilst we were colleagues, he was a little older than I am, and I always looked up to him. And he was an example of a role model to any rabbi, an example of a role model to any Jew in the world. He didn't just do Kiddush Hashem in the community, he did Kiddush Hashem in the entire world. Rabbi Maizels, with all his load and workload, never was short with a conversation with anyone. If he saw a little Jewish old lady in the supermarket, he would wait for her to finish the conversation, but he would not terminate the talk or the discussion until she had exhausted everything she had to say. So as much as he was in a rush and as much as he took upon himself, he never allowed someone to feel that he didn't have enough time for them. But if I have to put it in an encapsulated kind of way, I would say Rabbi Maizels fulfilled the Torah mitzvah, which says, "La ger, la yatom, ve'la almana yihye." You know, so Rabbi Maizels, those are the ones that our religion tells us are often overlooked and downtrodden, perhaps in society. La ger, meaning both. He who embraces the Jewish faith out of their choice, so it's a convert. Truly, la ger also means a stranger amongst you. And so his entire life was dedicated to helping everyone that he could, together with his beloved Rebbetzin. He was in charge of the conversion course in Cape Town, and he made every one of those converts feel special because he gave them total attention. And for any she'ela, any question they had, he would be the contact number. Layatom, also for orphans, for people who have no one to speak on their behalf. Rabbi Maizels spoke on their behalf. And he ensured that he was first in line when he came to any charitable need or any charitable requirement of the community. It wasn't only verbal compliment that he gave, but he rushed to assist people in dire need. He was dedicated completely. I spoke to one of his children earlier this afternoon, and I said, you know, Rabbi Maizels had a dream. And the dream was to join his children and join his grandchildren together with his beloved wife in Eretz Israel. But Rabbi Maizels was like Moshe Rabbeinu in a kind of way that he had a mission, and he had to take Israel out of Mitzrayim and take them to the border of the land of Israel. And then on, Yehoshua took over. So Rabbi Maizels had a mission, and that was his mission. His mission was the entire Jewish community. And whilst he articulated that final desire and wish to go to Eretz Israel and be with his family, he always put the community first. And that's the kind of role model that he was to every other rabbi. He put the community always first.
Rabbi Suiza, can I ask you, in all the years of you working together with him, and it was many years, how many years was it in total that the two of you worked together on the Beth Din in Cape Town?
Longer than I even remember, Rabbi, but I think it wasn't less than 37 years.
Yes.
It wasn't less than 37 years.
So in that time,
I remember being apprentices to Rabbi Dushinsky at the time, and I remember saying this at the Hesped. I think maybe it needs to be repeated. Rabbi Dushinsky, who was Zecher Tzadik Livracha, he was our teacher, and we admired him because Rabbi Dushinsky, every halacha that he stated to us, he brought the Shulchan Aruch and he brought the Gemara and he showed it to us. So whenever he made a statement, whether it was kashrut or whether communal issues or tefillah or anything like that, Rabbi Dushinsky would bring the evidence and actually show it to us. So Rabbi Dushinsky said to me, he says, look at Rabbi Maizels and make him your role model. If you want to be a good communal rabbi, you see in him what you need to be.
Now that's amazing. Rabbi Suiza, in those 37 years of working together with Rabbi Maizels, is there you know, like one particular story of something that happened that you know, that would be wonderful to share with everybody, that sort of captures who he was? Is there something that stands out for you? I'm sure there are many stories, but maybe just one. What's your favorite Rabbi Maizels story, you know, that shows how great he was?
He had a key to opening doors, everything. Whatever it was that needed a key to open it, whether it was through his kindness, whether it was through his Afrikaans ability to communicate, whether it was through the respect that people had for him. So when many keys were locked, many areas were locked to us, Rabbi Maizels would open. But I would say, if one of the greatest things he ever did is how we could actually work in shchita and not impose expenses on the community. So he ensured through his ability to communicate with other religious faiths, to ensure that what was not kosher was taken without any loss of price. so that the Jewish community wouldn't have to bear the burden of that extra expense. One thing that will stick with me forever is he found out that one Monday, the Shechita order, he was overseas on holiday, well-deserved, and he found out that the order for Shechita was very big, and I wanted to divide that order into working on 2 days while he was away, because the Shechita order was big. He was overseas. The next morning, Rabbi Maizels was in Cape Town at Shechita. He flew from overseas. He paid for his own ticket. He helped me to do Shechita. He was on a flight back to overseas that same evening. That was Rabbi Maizels. He surprised me. I would have never let him come. He just showed up at work.
Wow, amazing. That's amazing. Rabbi Suiza, thank you so much for your time and for being on. I know that that we all feel Rabbi Maizels, his contribution to Cape Town, to Kashrut, but right across South Africa. He served as a rabbi in Bloemfontein. I know that he schlepped across to Oudtshoorn and to Port Elizabeth and East London, and there was no journey that was too far, no walk that was too far. As a mohel, he would walk hours to do a milah. There's nothing. He was a person totally devoted, and he lived with such an incredible energy and passion that he was working till literally the night before he passed away, till late that night. And so we know, his contribution over many decades to Kashrut and to the Beit Din of Cape Town is just something which is breathtaking and awe-inspiring. We pay tribute to him. We send our warmest condolences to Rebbetzin Esther Maizels, who was his partner in absolutely everything that he did, and condolences to the entire family. His loss is such an enormous loss for our community, and so I wanted to make sure at this at this gathering that we pay tribute to him. Thank you, Rabbi Suiza, so much for joining us today, and continued success in Lisbon, and look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And now, the other great loss in the last week has been to South African Jewry, has been Eric Samson, who's literally a man who changed the world in so many ways, both in terms of what he achieved in the world of business, but then especially what he achieved in the world of philanthropy in terms of giving and defining the concept of generosity and vision and kindness. And the sheer number of causes and organizations that he gave to here in South Africa, in Israel, across the world, and in South Africa, both within the community and outside of the community, to so many different causes. It's absolutely breathtaking that one man could do so much in one lifetime, build such a global business, and at the same time give so much of himself and his resources to make this world into a better place, literally shifting the world. And his passing during the course of this last week is an enormous loss to South African Jewry, to world Jewry. And I wanted and invited Philip Krawitz to join me in just sharing some memories. Philip is one of the senior veteran leaders of the Cape Town Jewish community, a dear friend of mine, and was a dear friend of Eric Samson. And Philip, thank you for joining us today. Philip, I just thought to start our conversation, what struck me so forcibly about Eric is that on the one hand, he was a man who who literally changed the world through the big things that he did, both in his career, but also in tzedakah, in really redefining what the word generous means, and becoming one of the greatest philanthropists this Jewish community has ever produced, and indeed world Jewry has. And so in one sense, he was a man who moved the world on a real global scale, in Israel, across South Africa, in America, across the world, such an enormous global impact. And yet my experience of him, and I regard him I regarded him as one of my dear friends, My experience of Eric was that he was a person who had the most profound and deep humility. So he was really out there conquering the world and giving and changing, and a public figure, who was close to President Mandela, who was close to, President Mbeki and President Ramaphosa. I remember at the time of my inauguration, he was the one who ensured that President Mbeki would be there. So he was playing on a global scale with global leaders and prime ministers of Israel, and on that scale, and yet a person of the most profound humility and the most profound gentleness and kindness, and a person for whom family was everything. His children, and we extend, our warmest and sincerest condolences, of course, to his wife Sheila, who was at his right hand for everything and a partner in everything that he did, and his children and grandchildren, his children, who meant the world to him, and his family meant the world to him. So there was really the sense of a man who could conquer and change the world, but also someone who was deeply connected to his family and profoundly humble in the deepest sense of the word, and gentle and kind. And I think that was the paradox. Philip, I don't know if if that resonates with you. I know that you had a friendship that lasted with him for decades, and I don't know if that sort of contrast resonates with you in changing the world, and yet family and relationships, humility, kindness on a personal level was so profoundly important to him.
Thank you, Chief Rabbi. I think you've summed it up yourself pretty well. He literally was a man who could dine with beggars and walk with kings. What struck me about Eric was he would walk around with almost a permanent smile on his face. And wherever he could, he would come and he would bring joy to people, and he would help and he would change the world. I suppose if you can change the world from what it is to what it can be, that must be a life's mission which very few have the privilege of achieving. Now, I knew Eric as an incredible philanthropist, as an extremely successful businessman. As a businessman, people forget the tens of thousands of jobs that he created in this country, the whole new aura that he brought to an industry through growing from a humble company to a global entity. But it was Eric the man that impressed me so much. I had the great privilege of getting to know him just a little, and that glimpse into him is something that I shall never forget. I had the privilege of dining with him and Sheila, visiting their beautiful farm in Franschhoek, flying with him on his plane, sailing with him on his yacht, visiting him in America at his beautiful home in Newport. And everywhere there was one word that came across. It didn't matter that he wasn't at his best of health. He was always the generous host. He was always the fun-loving person. He was always eschewing any kind of hailing him as a hero or as a demigod for what he had achieved. He was such a humble man, and he loved the basic things in life. His family always came first. His wife Sheila was an example of how an Eshet Chayil and an incredible human being can combine for a global force. And really and truly, that relationship was something so special to watch. I don't think we ever saw Eric without Sheila. They were always together. And if I needed to chat to him about something, hold on, I must just see if Sheila's available. And then he would, of course, bring his kids in as well, which was just so wonderful to see. And, to see this man dispense his largesse with such kindness and such warmth, that was a true experience to behold. I remember sitting at a meeting at the United Jewish Campaign in Cape Town in the middle of Operation Protective Edge in Israel. And we were reading about the children who were being forced to dash to shelters with 30 seconds from the time that the mortar siren sounded. And we'd received requests for hospital equipment. And I proposed that we launch a special fund. Needless to say, Eric was the first person to come up and chip in with a very substantial amount of money. And then, having given that amount of money, he said, of course, you do realize that, I'm also part of the Johannesburg community, so I must give through Johannesburg as well. Oh, and by the way, Israel doesn't work in rands. Israel works in dollars. So let's put that into dollars. Now, that was a substantial contribution. The following evening, my wife tells me, Eric's looking for you. Used to get these calls in the evening. I phoned Eric. Philip, what's the problem, Eric? The amount that I promised. yes, Eric, Sheila's not very happy. I said, Eric, it's an enormous amount. I haven't told anybody yet. You want to cut? He says, I never said. She said it's too much. She says it's not enough. And with that, he proceeded to multiply it several times. That was the relationship that he had with Sheila, and the way he respected her. The fact that the foundation is known as the Eric and Sheila Foundation. Everything he did together with her. He loved to involve his children. And, to him, it must have been such a blessing that when he passed away, there he was surrounded by his entire loving family, who'd really walked the extra mile. I mean, for example, his daughter Frankie, when they wouldn't let anyone into the hospital because of COVID fears and things like that, Frankie insisted that she would go in, and she stayed in the room with her dad until he came home. The children were devoted to him. And of course, the other thing was when he would come to Herzliya, and we would be there to, fete him for all the good that he'd done and the amazing achievements of everything. What would he be doing? He'd be looking out for his grandchildren, who'd be rushing up to hug him and love his grandfather. And that was him. It was more important to be a grandfather to his grandchildren than to be recognized and to be feted for all of his achievements. Eric was a wonderful South African. He was passionate about this country. And of course, apart from creating jobs, he went out and did some amazing things. The Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital would not exist today if it was not for Eric, and so many other causes in South Africa. He loved his cricket, he loved his rugby. He had a special room in his house in Newport with comfortable chairs and a huge screen so he could watch every match and be involved. He would come to shul. He wouldn't sit in the front row. He would always sit a few rows back, very, very quietly and modestly and humbly. And this is a man who had a heart which was just so big and so great that I'm amazed it actually lasted all of 82 years. What he crammed into those 82 years was something quite incredible. And the void that we will have in Cape Town, the void that there will be in Israel, the void in America, is just unthinkable. In Israel, for example, he redid the whole of the Independence Hall to renew it to its former glory so that every Jew who comes there can see how the state of Israel was founded. The hospitals in the south that he created bomb-proof wings for, the Samson Asutra Hospital, the Ramla Project, the Prime Minister's Prize for Energy, every ounce of good that could be done in Israel, Eric was there to stand up and do. And of course, Bibi was a personal friend to him and Sheila, would always welcome them when they came to Israel, was there to phone Sheila after the bereavement. And it was just some measure from Bibi, from President Rivlin, who recognized his outstanding contribution. In America, the hospitals where he gave so generously. In South Africa, to virtually every cause. I don't believe there was a Jewish cause that was untouched by his philanthropy. But come back again and just think of Eric the man, humble, smiling, most incredible partner with his darling wife, Sheila, father to his children, to Dorothy, to Frankie, to Jeffrey, and to their spouses. The grandfather, the great-grandfather. This was a man whose mark will remain for decades. The loss to all of us is incalculable, but also the loss to his darling wife, Sheila, to his children, to his grandchildren, to his great-grandchildren is enormous. And all we can do to honor this great man is to remember to amplify the qualities which he displayed: generosity, largesse, humility, kindness, a great husband, a wonderful, wonderful father, and of course, for me, a very special friend.
Philip, thank you so much. And it's especially moving coming from you because, Philip, you, as one of the senior veteran communal leaders of Cape Town that is involved in everything, and of course, a dear friend to me, and I appreciate our friendship so much. You've seen so much of the community. You've seen so much of the business world, heading up Cape Union Mart. So you understand all these different elements, and your tribute is indeed very, very meaningful. And thank you for making the time. I think that, as you say, the void and the gap is enormous, but the comfort is this, that the torch has been passed to a new generation. And one thing that I know that Eric derived tremendous nachas from is the fact that the values that he lived with and that him and Sheila really implemented and made a reality in everything that they did, and Sheila continues to do, have been passed on to the next generation. And so we know that Frankie and Stephen, Dorothy and Leonard, Jeffrey and Ilana, and their children continue and are continuing this incredible legacy. And as you said, Philip, for me, I so enjoyed spending time with Eric, his warmth and kindness, that interpersonal connection. So he was a person who changed the world in business, in philanthropy. As you said, I don't believe there's a cause in South African Jewry that was not touched by Eric and Sheila, and so much as that he changed in the world, but it was always with a kindness, a humility, a love, a real sense of gentleness, and a total love and devotion to family, and so I think it's really as a community we were privileged to have a man of that greatness in our midst. And we wish to Sheila and the entire family long life on this occasion, and to pay tribute to each and every single one of them. May his memory be a blessing. Philip, thank you so much for giving of your time today and sharing your perspectives. So deeply appreciate it. And so we say as a community to the families of Rabbi Maizels and of Eric Samson, that we are with you at this time of your mourning and your loss. Our community is privileged to have produced such great leaders who inspire us all to become the best version of who each and every single one of us can be. So thank you so much, Philip. I'm going to end today. Loren from CSO Medical did manage to get back, but I think we'll have a chance, Loren, to talk next week and go more into it from a Cape Town perspective, as we are coming to the end of our time today. And I just wanted to close. So Loren, we'll hear from you next week. I know that the servers went down at CSO in Cape Town. So Loren, went off the line, and so thank you for. I think you're now back online, but we'll have a chance next week to go in more in depth. I don't want that you should have to rush your presentation. There's a lot of important things to hear, and to hear of the holy work that CSO Medical is doing in Cape Town. So Loren, let's save your presentation for next week, when we can give it the proper time that it deserves. I want to just conclude today and thank all of our panelists for joining us. The very important and moving discussions. These weekly webinars are going to be occasions where we'll be in conversation and to chat. And each week, after hearing from heroes in our community, literally heroes in our community, and paying tribute to the heroes in our community, I want to end each week just with a thought. It's a thought that relates actually to this week's parsha, because there's an amazing moment that we have so much to learn from. They were at the edge of the Red Sea, and the Jewish people, this week's Parsha B'Shalach, and the Pharaoh and the Egyptian army was behind them, and the sea was in front of them. And they didn't yet know about the miracle that was going to come, the splitting of the sea, so they felt trapped and cornered. And the people collapsed in a real sense of despondency, and they said, and they complained, and they said, because there were no graves in Egypt, you brought us here to die in the desert. And then God showed them the way, and he split the sea, and a miracle happened. But what we learned from them, and where was their mistake? I think their mistake was being too binary. Life presents itself with problems. Sometimes in life, we feel like we've got Pharaoh behind us and the deep blue sea in front of us, literally between the devil and the deep blue sea. And we don't know where to turn. And of course, at times like this, after a year of dealing with COVID and all of the complications, the fear, the bereavement, the losses, and now it stretches ahead, and sometimes we can feel cornered by it. But it's not only those problems, other problems in life, personal problems, financial problems that have resulted from it, emotional problems, all kinds of things where we feel cornered and we don't know where to turn. And our parasha teaches us two very important things. Firstly, we need to pray to God. He is waiting and listening for our prayers. And also that, the mistake that the Jewish people made at the edge of the Red Sea was in looking at things from a binary point of view. looking at things, well, it's either all good or it's all bad. You know, a moment before they were euphoric because they'd just been liberated from the slavery of Egypt. They had their freedom and they were ready to conquer the world. And the next moment, they were in the depth of despondency. And sometimes in life, we're always looking to sometimes we make the mistake that they did, which is to look at a situation and say, well, it's either all good or all bad. You know, sometimes we look at South Africa and say, well, is it the perfect country, or is it or is it falling apart? And we look at other problems, our personal problems, and think, well, it's either inspiring or it's something which is catastrophic. And actually, reality is never in the extremes of the binary. Reality is much more in the gray, where there's good and there's bad and there's pain and there's joy, and it's a mixture of all of those. And within the pain, there are blessings that we can find, and within the blessings, there are challenges. And really, what we need to do is approach life in a non-binary way, to look at it and to understand that it is more complex than that. And within the times of challenge, to look for the blessings. And in the times of blessings, to realize our vulnerability so that we don't become arrogant. But in the times of difficulty and challenge, that we don't become despondent, we find the blessings and see the gray and see the combination of both, and learn to savor each blessing and the good within it, and at the same time to be fortified when facing the enormous challenges. And that's what we learn from our parasha. God is with us. We have faith in him, and we must look at the world in all of the mixture of what it is, and savor everything within it, and don't look at any situation from a binary perspective. And in doing that, we empower ourselves to really face every challenge, embrace every blessing in our lives, and become the best version of ourselves. I so look forward to being with you again next week as we chat and have conversations with heroes in our community, and as we navigate this situation together as a community in unity, as brothers and sisters looking after one another. God bless you, and Shavua Tov, a good week to everybody.